Our job begins where most advisors stop. Saving money is great, but how do you spend it without risk in retirement? Welcome to Every Day is Saturday with Brad Gotto and Matt Stahl, partners and private wealth managers at Fiat Wealth Management. In this podcast, we aim to broaden your knowledge about the financial world we live in today and make the boring and complex financial decisions fun, informative, and educational. Join us on this journey where Brad and Matt will explore different strategies on how to spend your money without guilt and have peace of mind knowing you are spending it the optimal way in retirement.
Welcome to Every Day is Saturday with Brad Gotto of Fiat Wealth Management. I'm Patrice Sikora, and this is the first episode in this podcast series. It's always informative and it's fun because this one, well, we're going to learn about Brad from Brad, and then in the next one, we're going to learn about Brad's coworker, Matthew, but we'll get to that in a minute. Brad, let's start at the beginning. Tell me first, where do you come from? Where did you grow up?
Well, we moved a lot. I spent the majority of my life, Patrice, in Iowa. Was technically born in Omaha, Nebraska, but I don't like to claim that. I don't like to. I always tell people I'm an Iowa boy, and we did move around quite a bit for a lot of different reasons. I spent a little bit of my time in Texas as well, but again, the majority of my time was in Iowa. I grew up in a little town called Cherokee, about 5,000 people in the northwest part of the state.
But now you're in Minnesota. How did you get into Minnesota, number one, and how did you get into financial services in Minnesota?
Another great question, because I hate the cold. So it makes zero sense that I would move further north. But ultimately what led me here was college. Coming out of high school, I actually only applied to one college. I got accepted. That's the one I wanted to go to. So stopped the application process. And so I trekked up here to go to what was then called Bethel College, which is now called Bethel University, and started my journey there. And I had no intention, Patrice, when I started my journey there, of getting into the financial services industry. It wasn't even an iota of a thought. I've loved math, been good at math my entire life, but that's not what I was going to school for. I actually came to Bethel, which, if you're listening and unfamiliar, is a private Christian institution for youth ministry. They actually have a degree for youth ministry, not just, pastoral ministry for adults. And I always tell people it's a bit of a mutt major, because ultimately what you end up with is a minor in Bible, a minor in theology, and a minor in adolescent development. And so it kind of crams together the obvious things, the theology, the Bible stuff, but then you spend a ton of time just learning about the development and the psychology of teenagers, which I got to tell you was awfully interesting.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it's useful in financial services too.
Well, yeah, some things change and some things stay the same, right?
Right.
And the way that we choose to make decisions in our life.
Well,
some of it's helpful for sure.
How did you get into financial services from going to be a youth pastor?
Yeah, I tripped into it, fell into it, got called to it. Whatever you want to say, it was completely accidental, on accident, I guess. I don't know how to exactly put it. In fact, the day that I accepted a position to be a financial advisor, and then I'll kind of back up and give a little bit more context, but like the day I accepted the position, Patrice, I called my wife and I was like, hey, I got the job. They offered me the job and I think I should take it. And she's like, well, that's awesome. Congratulations, all that sort of stuff, a little bit of chit chat. And then she stops and she goes, so what exactly do you do? And I thought about it for a second, Patrice. I was like, I have no idea. I don't know.
And that is a leap of faith.
But backing up just a little bit, I actually did come out of school and become a youth pastor. I did it for a season. It was about 18 months. I was in between jobs. I had taken a job as a youth pastor at a church here in the Twin Cities. And I just knew when I took the job, I wasn't long for it. In fact, I told them that when I took the job, and I said, so if you're okay having me for a short period of time, I'd love to be here. And they did. When I was exiting, as I thought that I would, I was looking for other churches, got pretty deep into the process with another church, and it came down to another guy and myself, and I didn't get the job, and I was kind of threw me. I'm a very motivated person. Mm-hmm. And usually when I put my mind to something, I I get what I want. And I didn't. And at a young age, obviously I was only a year, 18 months removed from college. That was a pretty big ego shot. And I didn't really know what to do. And I felt like a bit of a failure, pretty young marriage at the time. And so I put my resume online. I started getting phone calls left and right, Patrice. And in fact, I got 14 phone calls in maybe 48 hours, if my memory serves, maybe 72, whatever it was a short period of time. And every single one of them was a financial services firm.
Wow.
Every one of them. Could be a coincidence, could be a God thing, could be whatever. Again, tripped, fell into it, however you want to look at that. But I didn't really take the calls for the first 10 or 12 that came in. But then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to start listening to these people. I don't know why they're all calling me. And the last phone call I got is the job that I ended up with. It was actually with Ameriprise Financial. It's where I started my career in this industry. But the guy, I remember talking to him and he said, you know what? Because I asked him, I was like, why are you calling me? My resume has nothing to do with this. My resume doesn't even say that I like math or financial planning or anything like that, although I do like math, but it didn't say that. It was all about my experience as a youth pastor, all my internships that I'd had, and with organizations during college and the missions trips and stuff like that I'd been on. And he said, well, in this industry, Brad, you need two things. You got to have the financial, the math skills, and you have to have people skills. One of those things that I can teach and one that I cannot. And your resume is all people skills and you can't teach that. We'd love to talk. I'm like, he caught my interest. One thing led to another. I got into the process with Ameriprise. It was a very competitive process, which of course
you probably rose to the occasion.
I was all in on.
Yep.
I was all in. I just wanted to beat everybody sitting around me vying for the same job. I didn't even know what job I was competing for, as I already alluded to. And so the end of the story is I ended up there, had to sit and basically go back to college, right? Because I had to pass all my securities examinations, insurance licenses, and then try to build a business from scratch in a state that I didn't grow up in. But I realized very, very quickly, Patrice, that I loved it because for all the same reasons that I loved being a youth pastor, this idea or concept of education and helping people. Obviously I went from educating youth on their faith to educating adults on their finances, but it still scratched the same itch for me. And in fact, it did it in a more profound way because I could see the impact you could have on people's lives when you gave definition and purpose to their money.
How did your family react to this? I mean, you were pretty committed to the church and youth. And now here suddenly you're getting into, my gosh, it's money. What did your family say?
Yeah. I think my in-laws had a more visceral reaction to it than my family did because they thought their daughter was marrying a pastor. So my family was happy for me. That said, of course, you got the practical side of your parents. They're like, you just paid a healthy premium to go to a private institution so you could get a degree that you can't get at a public institution. And now you're not going to use that degree. My argument to this day, Patrice, is I use my degree every day because my degree taught me empathy, which quite frankly is not an innate strength of mine. It taught me how to interact with people in a profound way. And at the end of the day, I just have a genuine curiosity about people. I love to hear people's stories, whether that's a high school kid talking to me about where he's at in his life and his struggles or his successes, or that's a 65-year-old telling me the story of how in the world they got to 65 years old and have whatever pile of money they have. It's just both very intriguing to me.
Tell me about your mom.
I got great parents. I pause because I have great parents and they're fun to think about. They divorced when I was young. And so I grew up in a divorced home, single parents, and I spent the vast majority of that time with my mom. That's the other part of my story that really plays into what I do, because so often, money is one of those things, Patrice, that it bleeds into everything in your life. Absolutely. That you can't disconnect money from anything that you do. It really drives, it's kind of at the core. Money is one of those divisive things that can really tear things apart, has the potential to bring things together. And I say all that because single mom, 3 kids. I got an older sister and a younger sister. So there lets you in a little more psychology. I didn't realize we're going to sit on a Chase lounge during this podcast, but I'm the middle child and I'm the only boy. So I got all the things. Single mom, 3 kids that just worked her tail off to make ends meet. And we never had much or never had maybe anything, but I never felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
From time to time, with kids in school, they have the shoes that you want, or they have nicer clothes than you, or whatever it may be. But I never really felt that way. I could always tell that my mom was doing the best that she could when we lived with her. And that financial struggle, though, that we went through did shape a lot of my decisions later in life, because it made me appreciate hard work. It forced me into the workforce at a very young age. Frankly, I got my first job at 7 years old. If you want to call it a job, I was a paper boy. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore,
yes.
Patrice. I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, but I was a paper boy and I did that for 7 years. And it started my first paper out. I think I got paid $30 a month to do that paper route. And by the time I was 14, I had 3 different paper routes, and I was making hundreds of dollars a month, running 3 different papers in Northwest Iowa. Even in spite of having multiple jobs, on Sunday mornings, my mom, during the wintertime anyway, would get in her car with me and help carry the papers. Because as you know, the Sunday paper's quite heavy.
Right.
And when you've got multiple paper routes, that's a lot of weight to carry. And so she would help with that as well.
And when it rains, you got to put everything in the plastic bags. Believe me, I had a son who'd had a paper route too. Yep, I know.
Yeah, so it started there, and I've had a job ever since. And I was blessed with a really good job in high school. I had a guy that went to the church that I was going to youth group at that kind of took me under his wing and mentored me and got me a job at a factory. So I worked at a factory making park equipment like picnic tables and benches and all that kind of stuff. Had made good money for a high school kid, and did the school to work program in my senior year. So I was out of high school by, 10:30, 11 in the morning or whatever it was, because I was ahead on my credits and I could go to work and work till 5 and work on Saturdays. And so was able to kind of support myself through that. It really just kind of taught me the meaning of hard work and the value of the dollar, quite frankly. And then in all of that, not to leave him out, didn't live with my dad, and sometimes weren't close to him either. There was times where we lived a ways apart, but he's always been a hard worker. Also blue collar, been in the grocery industry for a long time, driven routes for different companies, but always worked and always been very, very responsible with his money as well. And so that was kind of my influence around money growing up. As an advisor, Patrice, what that's led to is I have this desire to help people control their money. There's this saying that says, if you don't control your money will control you.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, most of the people that we talk to, by the world's definition, there's 7 billion people in the world, right, are rich. In America, they may not feel that way because America is so blessed as a country, but they're rich. And so we say all the time, and I joke with people all the time, you don't need my help getting rich. You already are. Mm-hmm. What I want to do is help put purpose behind what you have and help you kind of lead your best life. And that just comes from the way that I grew up and my background and the way that I was taught hard work. But then if you're going to work hard, you should play hard. You should give hard, be generous with your time and with your money.
Now, it seems to me that growing up, you worked hard, you saved money, you amassed money, but that's not the focus at Fiat Wealth Management.
Nope, it's not. We focus or specialize in people that are either nearing retirement or in retirement. But it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, this goes back to my major being a youth ministry major, mm-hmm. and this idea of adolescent development and learning kind of behaviorally how people do things. And anything in life, Patrice, you get into habits, right? And think about the habit of saving money. If you meet somebody that's lucky enough to lead kind of the status quo type retirement where they get to stop working at some point in their life and live off of the money that they've saved, that means that for decades, they lived below their means. They didn't spend 100% of what they made. They socked it away, and they built this habit of living below their means. Behaviorally, it becomes really hard when you enter into retirement at whatever age that is, in your 50s, your 60s, 70s, whatever it is, to take that pile of money that you worked so hard to save and actually start spending it. What we find happens, quite frankly, Patrice, is they don't.
Right.
They don't spend it, and they die the richest person in the graveyard, which stinks. We want to help them feel comfortable leading the lifestyle that they want to lead. And Patrice, that could mean the crazy stuff to some sort of global travel, but that could also mean generosity and gifting, because a lot of people, they don't die broke. They leave some money to the next generation, and that's awesome and commendable and all these sorts of things. But selfishly, Patrice, I mean, for me personally, I would rather give it away while I'm alive, because then I get to see, I get to see the fruit of that, which is a lot cooler, I think, than when you pass away. But again, people tend to not do it out of fear, right? Because they don't know when they might need the money, might not need the money. They don't know what's going to happen in the economy. They don't know what's going on with the markets, and these all kinds of things that lead to these decisions. But ultimately, another kind of old saying, Patrice, is there is no true freedom without boundaries. You could summarize what we do or our specialty, and we help set the boundaries to give you the freedom to do the things that you want to do.
I like that. I like that a lot. So taking your growing up years, your college years, your early adult working years, and now, what is your proudest achievement, Brad?
My family. It's the obvious answer, but it is. Early in my adulthood, if you will, and I don't know exactly as a male when that starts. I think psychologically they tell you it's not until you're 25 and your frontal lobe is developed. But coming out of college, I was married. I got married the August after my senior year of college. 3 months after I graduated, I had been with my fiance, obviously, since high school. So I got to marry my high school sweetheart. But Patrice, when you outkick your coverage like I did, you lock that up. So I did. And she went to the University of Iowa. And while I was up here in Minneapolis at Bethel, and so we did the long distance thing for 4 years.
And she followed you up to Minnesota?
She did. And it wasn't all about me. I'd like to think that it was, but at the end of the day, we were trying to make these decisions on where we should live and that kind of stuff. Part of the problem was, Patrice, I took a little bit of a victory lap at Bethel. So I wasn't quite done with school when she was. So
right.
She had the ability to move and I did not quite yet. And then also my wife is a neonatal intensive care nurse.
Oh,
she's a rock star. And I'm not going to talk too much about her, otherwise I'll get emotional, but she is a rock star. She's amazing in what she does. And at the time, Minneapolis had one of the biggest needs for nurses in the country. It was just a really good natural fit for her to come up here. She got an excellent job at the Children's Hospital in Minneapolis right out of college. She's been there ever since.
Wow.
But at that point, I'm a youth pastor, right? So I've got my wife who's paying all of our bills as a nurse, because youth pastors don't become youth pastors for the pay by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, Patrice, my salary my first year out of college was $20,500. That was my salary. Then I'm working with kids all day, every day. I kept telling my wife, I don't want kids. I mean, the last thing I ever wanted to think about was like dealing with kids all day and then coming home and dealing with my own kids.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s that the switch kind of flipped for me. And I was like, you know what? I want kids. We started that process. We have two boys now. My oldest, his name is William. His full name is William, but we call him Liam. That's what you call compromise in a marriage. I like the old school power names. And so William was more my deal. Liam being his nickname was more the wife's deal. And now he's 11 and he goes back and forth from wanting to be called Liam and William. So we've got a little bit of identity crisis going on there. And then I have two boys. My younger son is 7. He'd tell you he's 7.5.
Of course.
His name is Hudson. And so I've got a 5th grader and a 2nd grader. Very proud of them. They're great boys. They have very kind hearts. They're very respectful of the other kids at school and their teachers. And that's really what my wife saves premature babies' lives for a living. And I got 2 boys that are respectful. So very proud of my family. I also have a puppy. I got to talk about the puppy. I've got a English cream golden retriever, which just means he's white. It's a fancy way to say white. So I have a white golden retriever, and his name is Kinnick. And for those that are unfamiliar, that is a homage to my home state, Iowa Hawkeye football team that plays at Kinnick Stadium, because my wife wouldn't let the kids be named after the Hawkeye stuff. So
smart woman.
So I got the dog.
Smart woman. Yes. All right, Brad, you've got the attention of a lot of people. Who do you want listening to this podcast? Who should be listening to this podcast?
For sure, my mom. I hope that my mom tunes into the podcast, because if my mom doesn't listen, I don't think anybody's going to. But in all honesty, our goal in starting this, Patrice, is I love education. I've talked about it a lot. I love helping other people. Some of the content, for sure, absolutely. We're a wealth management company, is going to be related to that, right? We're going to try our best in a fun and educational way to bring concepts to people that can help them have success for them, whatever that means financially, right? Because for most people, their pile of money is just a pile of money, and it's not being pointed in a direction. It doesn't have purpose. And we want to try to bring some guiding principles through this podcast and have it be educational in that format. But at the end of the day, that's not our only goal. Our goal is to also be entertaining, to have a lot of fun. So about half the content, Patrice, our hope is to bring kind of lifestyle topics and episodes into the podcast as well, whether that's stuff that's semi-related to what we're doing here at Fiat, and bringing in people like travel agents to talk about fun ways to vacation, or bringing in yoga instructors to talk about how to healthy habits to lead life. Or, in the past, Patrice, we've had professional home organizers come talk to some of our clients about how to structure their home in an organized fashion.
Oh boy, forget that one.
To all the way to maybe I'll invite my mom and dad on, and we'll have a little bit of fun with them as well, and quiz them on their own finances to see if even my own mom and dad know what they got going on in their own financial life. Who knows, Patrice? We want to have a lot of fun while giving education, and I realize that's a tall task, if you ask me. It's hard to make education entertaining, but I really think we can get that done.
And I do believe you will be doing that. Now, how can people reach you if they want to get in touch with you, Brad?
I think the easiest way, Patrice, is just go to our website, because whether you want to call us, you want to email us, or whatever medium you want to try to get a hold of us, all of that information is on our website. The website is www.fiat, FIAT, stands for wealth management. So fiatwm.com. And I'm excited too, because we get a lot of comments on our name, and we get a lot of people that ask about our name. And so in the next episode, when you get to chat with Matt a little bit, we are going to spend some time in episode 3 talking about the name, how we came up with it, what it means, and how it kind of fits into the culture of what we're doing here.
Yeah. I want to know who knew the Latin there.
What wasn't me.
And that is Brad Gotto of Fiat Wealth Management. And to know when new episodes of Every Day is Saturday are ready for you, subscribe using the subscribe button on this page. Of course, make sure to share this podcast as well. I'm Patrice Sikora, and let's talk again later.
Thank you for listening to Every Day is Saturday. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Fiat Wealth Management or Foundation's investment advisors. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.